Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. We're now only days away from the first 2024 presidential debate that is going to be held in Milwaukee on Wednesday. And President Trump sending ever stronger signals that he intends to sit it out. Here is his recent message on Truth Social. Many people are asking whether or not I will be doing the debates. All Americans have been clamoring for a president of extremely high intelligence. As everyone is aware, my poll numbers over a wonderful field of Republican candidates are extraordinary. He goes on to say, Reagan didn't do it, and neither did others. People know my record, one of the best ever. So why would I debate? I'm your man. And Bill, I wonder what you make of this as a strategy for President Trump. It is true that he is leading the Republican field by a wide margin. On the other hand, do Republican voters want to see the person that they're going to vote for here in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina or some of these early states? Do they want to see that person tangling on the debate stage? And does it make Trump look weak, or does it make him look maybe that he feels like he's entitled to the nomination to let these other candidates go at it while he does some sort of counter programming?
Well, that's the bet. One thing we should point out, the difference with Reagan was he was elected to a first term. He was running for a second term. So most of the time, presidents don't have serious challenges unless their presidencies have been an utter nightmare, like Jimmy Carter or something. The answer to why he should go is because he lost the last election, and therefore I would think he would want to persuade Republicans that he is still the better choice for a third nomination. So there's that difference. You know, maybe he'll be proved to be right by events, but you play sports, Kyle. Whenever I played sports, and I've been on a team that tried to sit back on a comfortable lead, like in basketball, you're really vulnerable to sudden changes in the environment. Like if someone else wins Iowa or New Hampshire, all of a sudden, then you're playing catch up. So I'm not sure it's wise. And with all this stuff going on, these indictments, I would think Donald Trump wants to go before Republicans and tell them why he still deserves the nomination. My gut tells me it's not going to work for him, but I'm in the minority right now.
Trump's absence also poses a question for the other Republicans on stage, which is how to handle his absence. And notable this week that there has been the publication of some documents tied to a super PAC supporting Ron DeSantis. And this gets a little complicated because of the way that these campaign finance rules give candidates incentives to set up and have these outside groups that they're not allowed to directly coordinate with. And so often those super PACs, as a way of communicating in plain sight, they post polling memos. They sometimes post strategy memos. Well, these are some memos that were posted by a political consulting group run by the chief strategist of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' super PAC. And one of them involves suggestions for the DeSantis debate strategy. Here are 4 bullet points. 1, attack Joe Biden and the media 3 to 5 times. 2, state Ron DeSantis' positive vision 2 to 3 times. 3, hammer Vivek Ramaswamy in a response. And 4, defend Donald Trump in absentia in response to a Chris Christie attack. And Bill, a couple thoughts here. One is that it is just fascinating the way that these campaign finance rules result in this sort of discussion taking place in public documents that can be found and published and discussed by reporters and commentators. It's an odd sort of thing when your super PAC debate strategy goes public in a way that probably didn't even a few years ago before super PACs took such a large role in these kinds of campaigns. But 2, now that this strategy is public, it poses an odd sort of question for Ron DeSantis as well, because is he now going to follow the strategy that is laid out there, which would seem a little bit inauthentic to say the least? Or is he going to deviate from it then?
Yeah, I think it depends what the debate turns out to be. If the guys all spend their time fighting each other, then I think Donald Trump wins. I believe that the guy who's going to win is the guy that talks about Joe Biden and what Republicans need to do to have a better future, more secure on the world stage, more prosperous at home, and battle all the trends that we've seen the last 2 or 3 years. I'm afraid that this is a problem when Donald Trump is the issue. When he becomes a topic, all of a sudden you're back to 2020 and grievances, and you're not talking about what you're going to do for American families going forward. You know, in 2016, Donald Trump, yes, he fought with the other guys, but a lot of his campaign on making America great was forward-looking, what they were going to do, and he delivered some of it in tax cuts and so forth. Now, I'm not sure he has that agenda. A lot of it looks like getting revenge against people. Admittedly, a lot of them on the Democratic side have treated him unfairly, but I'm not sure that's good for the nation as much as Donald Trump might desire it.
The other challenge in these kinds of large debates is always trying to get a word in edgewise. And as a reminder, there are 8 candidates who have met the polling threshold and the requirement to have 40,000 individual donors. They are Trump, DeSantis, Ramaswamy, former Vice President Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Chris Christie. There's 7 that will apparently be on the stage. But news today that Miami Mayor Francis Suarez is claiming that he has qualified. Also, businessman Perry Johnson saying he's qualified. We'll have to wait to see whether the RNC confirms that and agrees with those claims that the polling thresholds have been met depending on the particular polls that the RNC is counting in its threshold decision. But Bill, that's the other fascinating thing is we could end up with a debate with 7 or 8 or even 9 people here. And maybe that works to the advantage of some of these lesser known candidates. They can have a moment in the sun and get people to know them, get some higher name ID. But to your point about Trump sitting it out, it does make you wonder whether it's to the advantage of a candidate like Ron DeSantis, who's polling at number 2 in double digits, to be tangling with some of these other guys that most voters have never heard of.
I'll say one thing, a minor candidate may not win, but he may raise issues the other ones will duck. And in raising certain issues, he may force some answers and change the nature of the debate, even if he doesn't win, if it doesn't work to his advantage. I think the Republican Party needs a vigorous debate about what they're going to do and what they offer the American people. And I think what will happen, not just from the first debate, but we start to winnow out the candidates. And what usually happens is someone surprises us in New Hampshire. Maybe it's Chris Christie, or wins the Iowa caucuses. Maybe that's DeSantis or Tim Scott. And then they get their moment in the sun. But we'll see if anyone can build something that sustains it. Most of the attention has been on why Ron DeSantis has not caught on. He's actually lost some ground since he announced, and why he's not been able to build more support. But the fact is that none of them really have moved that far. Vivek Ramaswamy has done pretty good recently, but he's still very low down. It's still Trump versus the others, and he still has a dominating lead. I expect some of this to be shaken up. Maybe not all next week, but as we get into the season, going back to the Democrats, when Joe Biden won the nomination, I thought that Kamala Harris, as an African-American woman from a big state, would do really well. And she seemed to dominate the first debate, but she dropped out before the first votes were cast because she just didn't catch on. So you never know.
But the challenge with this winnowing process is, what are the political incentives? And there are people that it seems to me stay in because they're getting attention, they're auditioning for a talk show somewhere, or maybe a cabinet post. And as long as they have the gas to keep going, why would they quit? And so it'll be fascinating, Bill, to see if there is any effort by party brokers or big donors to urge some of those people out early to prevent the kind of pileup that we had in 2016, where President Trump was winning primaries with a third or less of the vote because the rest of the vote was split among 5 or 6 people. And if you buy the argument that President Trump is unlikely to win a head-to-head rematch with Joe Biden, there is an element of self-interest here too, because if you are one of these candidates who is polling in single digits, you could keep going and post a 4th place victory in New Hampshire or Iowa, but what is that really going to accomplish? And to me, it makes more sense to get out and endorse someone that you actually think can beat Joe Biden, and then maybe be the energy secretary or whatnot for a couple of years, which as a political stepping stone sounds better than 4 more years in the wilderness.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Some of these people are in it because it's free publicity for their TV show, their radio show, their new book or something. It's a ton of free publicity. I think Newt Gingrich once wrote a memo saying, never say you're not running for president, because if you do that, people stop paying attention to you. So there clearly is that incentive. On the other hand, a lot of things shake up. It's like musical chairs. If someone drops out, then someone who wasn't viable before might become viable. Depends whether you're down in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6% range, or you're up in the 20s or something. So I don't expect they'll drop out right away. Some of them will just run out of money. My bet is that Republicans want to win. They're tired of losing. We lost not only the presidential race, but we lost most of the Congress, and people want it back. And I don't think they want to just make a point. I think Republicans want to win. The danger is if it's Trump versus Biden, we have the spectacle of an indicted former president and candidate running against a sitting president who's likely to have been impeached by the time he's running. And then it becomes a question of who is less popular.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Potomac Watch.